Good morning, everyone. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. I hope everyone will be able to celebrate a little bit tomorrow. I know they've asked us not to have the big celebrations. That's certainly impacted my house. We would have probably had, the boat would have been full. And,
yes, we would have. We had the big Allen family. Yeah, you have your big
the
family.
boat would have been full, but now it'll just be a small gathering. Just the right thing to do, but I hope everyone plays it safe out there, and whatever that means to you. And I
hope the wonderful Mrs. Allen cooking. Is Terry cooking?
Yeah, actually, it's a combination. My son-in-law, and we've been sort of, for the lack of a better phrasing, quarantining with them. Our bubble includes one of my daughters and my son-in-law because my wife watches their children.
Right.
During the day, and so we've sort of had to maintain this bubble ourselves. And
the Allen bubble. That's right. It's the Allen bubble.
Yeah. So we've had to be cognizant of it because their lifestyle is a little bit different than ours. It's easy for my wife and I not to go anywhere, but my son-in-law works and stuff. So we've had to work at it, but everyone's been careful, and people have been tested. I've said this the other day. I'm the only one in my family, I think, that hasn't been tested.
Yeah. Same here.
Yeah, so just because I go nowhere, so I haven't had a reason to. But we've had reasons to be tested because they came in contact with people who were turned out to be positive. But saying all that, just again, hoping everyone has a safe and memorable, and it probably will be memorable for a variety of reasons. Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
But, Tom, let's talk about hockey because it won't be long, and that's because I'm an optimist. We're going to have some hockey now. I know it sounds bad. Some of my readers have sent some stuff to me, and they're concerned about this. But here's why I don't think it's bad. These are very skilled, experienced negotiators handling this. Gary Bettman and Donald Fehr are not going to be playing chicken, trying to figure out what the breaking point for the other side is. They know that this is important issues, and this is, let's be fair to the players. Like I'm very understanding of their position. They've negotiated this contract, and then now the NHL is coming back to them and said, well, wait a minute here, because we didn't realize it was going to be that bad. And the tendency, I think, of anybody in that position is as well, we negotiated a favorable deal. We looked ahead and thought this was good.
Well, I'm gonna come push back a little bit on you there. To me, the Players Association knew this was coming. There's no way that they didn't. They've already sat there to me in my mind and said, okay, yes, we negotiated that deal, but this has gone on longer than we thought. We know the NHL is going to come back. How do we react to it? And they have to push back. The NHL Players Association can't just cave and give into them.
So when you were negotiating contracts and you thought, boy, I'm winning this deal because the other side's not thinking ahead here, you then told them, look, you're making a mistake here. No. Because we see this, it's going to be a really good deal for us, and you're just not seeing that. So I'm going to let you know this now, so that you don't come back to me. No, of course you didn't. No. So my only point in all this is I'm sympathetic to the players because we've all been in that position where we've done something to give us a favorable advantage, and the other side said, well, but we didn't see it coming. Now, saying all that, even though I'm sympathetic, you know what? This is a pandemic. Yeah. It's unpredictable. Yeah. The owners are going to lose money because it's not likely we're going to see full arenas. And maybe not at all. Yeah. Maybe we won't see anybody. But certainly we're not going to have. They're not going to get the gate revenue that they would get in a normal year. So I think the players have to respect that, because if they don't get any fans, they're going to lose a ton of money. They being the owners.
And what Gary Bettman really has in his favor too is that what I hear, there's a lot of owners that just don't want to play, even if the Players Association accepts what the current offer is.
Well, I guess we'd have to define a lot. I've heard there are some who have thought that, but I think the majority of them still believe we'd be better off playing some games because you don't want to lose the continuity. But it is true, because I've heard the same thing from people that I trust. that there are some owners who point out, we would lose less money if we don't play.
Yeah.
If we're not going to be able to have.
See, that's the odd thing about it, right? So they're going to play. Now, obviously, they want to play for a lot of reasons to keep the game going, the continuity we talked about. But so the owners are going to end up losing money, irrespective of what negotiations happen here. The only people that end up making money are the players. So,
well, the fewer games the NHL plays. Now, again, this is all based on the idea that they're not going to have any fans,
right?
Which I think is likely, but we don't know. But because anybody who's paid attention to the vaccine, which I think is crucial to bringing fans in the building, they're saying that it won't be available to the masses. Now, it'll be available to healthcare workers, the people with the compromised immune systems, the elderly. It'll be available to them starting sometime in the beginning of the year. And it's really, some doses are going to be available, I think, even before we reach New Year's, but not the masses. The masses are going to get it, somewhere in the end of the second quarter, which to me means May, or the start of the third quarter, which means July. Well, by then we're going to be in the playoffs, so maybe we could, we might see the conference finals with some fans, and now who knows? I mean, maybe they'll come up with a plan to get some fans in. I mean, who knows on that? But the bottom line is that if there are no fans or very few fans, then the fewer games the NHL plays, the better it is for owners, because they want to maintain some continuity. And I think this is the crucial thing for Gary Bettman, and I think he is totally cognizant of this. Is that the NHL, despite the fact that people always want to criticize Gary Bettman, has been on a steady rise. It's had momentum as it's just gaining. Every year there's a little bit better on how things are going. And, they had reached $5 billion in revenue. I mean, there were, people in the 70s and 80s would never dream that we'd reach that. Absolutely. So what Bettman's objective is, and the goal is to get them at a place where we can continue that momentum. Can't get it all back at once, but we got to be in a position to be able to seize that and get back on that momentum. Well, you can't do that, in my opinion, if you don't play. You have to keep playing so that you're still there, you're still doing the thing on everyone's mind. You want people to feel like it's business as usual and normal and all those kinds of things. So I think it's imperative that he play now. So now you got to find the sweet spot. How many games?
I'm going to jump on you 1 second there, though.
Yeah.
Okay, but we go back and we've had this discussion before, I think, though, about the lockout, especially in 04, 05.
Yeah. Totally different scenario.
Totally different scenario, but the end result wasn't that there was any damage. There was no, to me, there was no. So the league was starting to get better and better along then too, and there was nothing to stop that. It continued to get better and better.
I hear your argument, and I understand it. I mentioned it in my column as well. That may be the passion, but the concern is that now life has changed for everybody.
Right.
Like before, the concern was that they would find other things to do, and they wouldn't come back.
Right.
But that didn't happen. Right. But this is different. Now what we're seeing in all sports is a little bit of a malaise. We're seeing, television ratings are down. There seems to be less interest. Although saying that, one of the arguments for your case is those new retro jerseys. I've heard they're selling through the roof.
Yeah.
Now I haven't checked on that. But anecdotal evidence from talking to some people that seem to know was that those were selling very well. So that would suggest there's some passion.
They're brilliant too. I thought they were fantastic. I'm sure there's other people that aren't going to like them, but just the idea of having the retro jersey. So that's the thing I like with the league, and I know you do as well. They're always coming up with new things now. I mean, the outdoor games have become very popular. These jerseys, the tracking puck and all those kinds of things. So
So I mean, maybe they will. Maybe they will come back, but you can't count on that. I mean, I had this discussion with someone from a team, and I brought that up as a possibility, and he goes, "God, you just sound like the GM who thinks that everything's going to be okay." He said, it's our the marketing department's job is to anticipate potential problems. So we just can't assume that they're going to come back. Maybe they will. Maybe hockey is completely different, and because we've always. sort of known that the passion level of hockey fans is different.
Right.
I
guess, yeah. But you look at other sports too, at baseball with their labor problems and other issues with players, steroid era, and all that kinds of stuff. And everybody's predicting that it's going to really hurt the game. Has it really hurt the game in baseball?
Well, it's just there's a sense that people aren't as into it as they should be given the circumstances.
Yeah.
Like the fact that we had the lowest MLB World Series ratings.
And you mentioned about the Masters too. I mean, that was a surprise. How low the numbers were for the Masters.
Yeah, lowest ratings since 1957.
Yeah,
down 51% from last year. Now Tiger, of course, won last year. So that's and there are other issues too, like the political thing. The election. People were their time was focused on what was going to happen with the election, or they were unhappy with the athletes speaking out. All of our seasons were out of their normal times. So, I mean, there are a lot of reasons that people may have just sort of lost interest. The other thing too is everyone's sort of, how many of your friends have said, I've reconnected with my family?
Yeah.
Which is
now Doors doing other things. Yeah. They don't want to watch the TV anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you like that. And the biggest one that I made note of in my column, because I happened to see a story about this, Home Depot sales are up 25%.
Yeah.
People are working on their houses.
Yeah.
So, and they're enjoying it, so for whatever that reason. But anyway, regardless, I think that's the goal. They want to make sure they get back to where they were. They don't want to just assume that they're going to roll out the red carpet and say, come on in. And suddenly we're going to have 19,000 again.
That's well put. Yeah. I agree with that totally.
So they're just trying to be careful. But what's your best guess, Tom, on when you think based on the fact that, we've got some hurt feelings and we've got to salve the wounds and we've got to
I don't think there's any hurt feelings at all. I think they're putting on an act like there's hurt feelings. Like I said before, like to me, I'd be totally shocked if the Players Association hadn't already sat down and said they anticipate the league to come back to them to renegotiate based on where the pandemic is right now.
Well, for sure. Yeah.
So I think it's kind of an act. They have to do that. Kind of look like, oh my God, I can't believe you're coming back to us again to try to get more from us. Right. They know it's coming. I don't say anybody in the right mind could. So I think the league knows that too. So I don't think the league is going to be worried about trying to mend some fences here or worried about hurt feelings. This is
so the way we're going to play January 1st then.
Yeah, I think if the players are incentivized to do that, that will happen. If the players are convinced that they can push this back a little bit farther and just roll the dice a little bit, see if they can just squeeze out a little bit more from the owners, then it'll be delayed. But if if the league sits down and says to them, okay, we're going to play 60 games and here's the time frame that we have to do it in, to start the playoffs and all the different rationale for that, TV and Olympics and everything, then I think then the players are going to say, listen, we have to start now to maximize what we're going to get, even though it's reduced.
Well, the one thing that goes against the owners really do have the leverage here for two reasons. First of all, the fewer games for them, the better. They want to play, but I don't think they want to play 82. Right. But the other thing is, who dislikes the compressed schedule the most? The players.
Yeah.
They don't like this.
I know. And I don't get that. That wouldn't have bothered me.
I know, but they complain about it. They don't like it. And, they don't like it for whatever reason.
Yeah. Again, I think that's a little bit. I think they use that a little bit as a negotiating tool. I don't think the players really sit there and go, "Oh my God, I can't."
Well, I don't know how they can use it as negotiation. It works great for the owners. So,
I just
so I don't know. I'm just guessing. Let's just say this November's done. I mean, it's not, but let's say it's done. So basically, we're 31 days.
Yeah. So and then you got a training camp before then too, right?
Yeah. So, and all that idea that the 7 teams who have been dormant since March,
I know,
to get that extra training camp, gone. So the Red Wings and the Kings and all those teams, they're just sorry. You're a victim of
a player like Joe Thornton. Joe Thornton's gone over to where? Sweden or Finland or wherever he's not playing?
Switzerland.
Switzerland, right? He's playing for free. You got to admire that. He's got over there playing for free, supposedly, because he's one of those guys. Now he's got a new team in Toronto, but he was with San Jose.
What's the phrase? I love that phrase. You love the phrase too. What's the phrase? Love of the game.
Love of the game. Yes, I love it. And he does have love of the game. Yeah,
he does. For sure. For sure. I mean, it's not like he needed the money. So.
Yeah, and he could have just stayed home and retired, right? I mean, he's made enough money now. He's played long enough. Yeah. He's a great career. I mean, I'm sure he wants to win a Stanley Cup. That's still his goal. But yeah,
it's the old used to say about the Cubs. Chicago Cubs star Ernie Banks is always his line is "Let's play two." That's that's kind of joke. Let's just play. Well, I always said that. I've had discussions with people about. The idea a lot of them don't like to go over and play in like the World Championships after a long season, 82 games and all that. And I said, I may not know what I'm talking about because I've never been an elite athlete, but my feeling always is, you have such a finite career that, when they want you. Yeah. So if they want you to play, to me, based on my attitude, I think, well, I'm all in. You want me to play?
I think when I see guys turn that down, I think that's a huge mistake. I can see if a guy's banged up at the end of the season, he's got injuries and stuff like that. But to go represent your country, I represented Chris Mason, the goaltender who had played in Nashville and St. Louis and everything. And I'll never forget one year, his team had got beat out, and he had me. I remember Steve Yzerman was the GM of the Canadian team that was going over to play in the World Championships, and he asked me to call Steve Yzerman to ask if he could play. He didn't want to wait and see. And I called Steve Yzerman up, and he was like shocked because most guys they have to call them up and kind of convince them to go, or they say, "Oh, he goes what?" And it was funny. I said, "Yeah, he wants to go." And he said, "Wow," he was really impressed by that. And because Chris saw for what it was, just like you said, go play for your country and play more hockey. That was fantastic. So.
Yeah, well, and the idea is that. One of it was if you remember Jack Ferrara, I know you do, but if our viewers remember Jack Ferrara, who was a former general manager, Jack was involved in USA Hockey, and oftentimes if his team wasn't in the playoffs, he'd be involved. He said, I don't get it because your goal every year is to play hockey until June.
Right.
And so now you're done in April, sooner than you thought, and now you're saying you're so tired that you need to take a rest. Well, would you have said that if the playoffs are on, that you needed a rest?
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree.
What is
Jack Ferrara doing now? Is he still in hockey?
Yeah, he is. He's a consultant. I think he might still be with the Kings, or maybe he's moved to some other team, but he's a well-respected guy. Yeah, it's been a while since I talked to him. I called him. I think I did a piece on Tommy Glavine. I think that's the last time I talked to him. And Glavine, of course, was the great Braves pitcher who was actually drafted in the NHL. And Jack Ferrara was one of the ones who had spent a lot of time scouting him. And usually when I do a Glavine could have played in the NHL story, I talk to him because, he says, he would have played.
Jack was the first general manager of the San Jose Sharks, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Because that's right. Because I worked on their TV. I did the color commentary on their TV network the first year, and he wanted to come back. I really got going in the agent business, so I couldn't do both at that point. So he was a good guy, very good.
Jeez, you could have made your mark as a broadcaster.
I loved it. It was good. They'd hired at the start of the year. They'd hired Dennis Hull. For anybody that's ever seen Dennis Hull,
he's hilarious.
Yes, but he's a real storyteller. And I guess when he started off, he'd never done that before, and he couldn't. The TV just didn't work for him because he wanted to tell stories all the time.
Yeah.
So I think they kind of came to a mutual conclusion that this just wasn't working. And I worked with the Kings doing their radio color work the year before. And they asked me to go to the team. It was great too. I can't remember who it was. The play-by-play guy was an old football guy, and he was fantastic, real gentleman. I can't remember his name right now, but it was great working with him. But I really enjoyed it. It was fun.
Yeah, I remember Dennis Hall's he'd start out his routine. He did the banquet circuit, and I can't remember where I've seen him. I've seen him speak multiple times, but he'd always start out. He goes, early in my career, he said, I was Bobby Hull's brother.
Yeah,
and he goes, man, it'll just be great when I retire. And then as soon as I retired, then I was Brett Hull's uncle.
Oh, is that what funny? I can't remember if it was him or Bobby had the line that he made famous. He said, "My wife made me into a millionaire." Like everybody thinks he's giving his wife a compliment.
Bobby, yeah.
Yeah, well, I used to have $5 million. He goes there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but I used to have 5 million. Now I only got one. Yeah,
that was a famous line. That was the hockey player line.
Yeah, no, yeah, the Hull family. But it is true. I mean, Dennis Hull ended up when I was a kid, or younger, I should say. He ended up getting traded to Detroit. So I saw him here too. And the thing that struck me is, he had great hockey instincts. Dennis did. Like, he could just like, one of Brett's biggest strengths besides his shot that was never talked about is his understanding of how to get open.
Right.
He told me once, well, I wrote his book, and I remember the line that I remember is his dad had said to him, whenever you think you're most out of the play, is when you're the most dangerous.
Yeah.
And so what Brett then developed was a habit is when he'd come over the line and then he'd do a little button hook and then head back toward the blue line.
Right.
And then he'd look like he was giving himself up, or he was heading to the bench, or he was doing everything else. And so whoever was defending him would just let him go because he was going away from the play.
Sure.
And then he'd button hook back in and then just sort of dive back in. And within seconds, he was there and he had a shot. Yeah, because he.
Remember, who else was really good at that? Remember Joey Mullen?
Oh yeah.
So Joey Mullen wasn't the biggest guy, a very physical guy, and he was playing in. He must have been in Calgary at the time. And I was a young player coming up, and he came to the front of the net, and I'm cross-checking and punching him in the back of the head. I'm thinking, and then he backs up and he goes out to the high slot, and I'm thinking I must have really intimidated him, and he was scared of me and got away. Well, he knew exactly what he was doing. He got the high slot, and his teammate in the corner with the puck knew what he was doing. He passed it out to him. Joey Mullen, who fires a one-timer, passed me into the net, and he's sitting there, and he didn't laugh at me, but he kind of looked at me like, yeah, you didn't get me, kid. I got you.
No, exactly.
And the other guy was Charlie Simmer. He was like that too. Charlie was the kind of guy that when he played on the Triple Crown line in LA with Dion and Taylor, Charlie'd come to the front of the net and you'd try cross-checking me. He'd go, oh, hey, Tommy, settle down here a little. Settle down. He's being really nice to you. He's having a little conversation with you. You're trying to take break his spine in half. And then he'd do the same thing. He'd go wander away, and then he'd think you'd really intimidate him, and he'd do the exact same thing. He'd fire a one-timer. And he was more funny. He'd kind of laugh at you a little bit after he did it, but he was a good guy.
Yeah, that Triple Crown line, that's, everybody remembers Marcel Dion, that line, but they forget Taylor and Simmer.
Yeah.
And those were, Taylor was a hard-working player.
Oh, great teammate. I played with him in L.A. He was a captain there, just a fantastic guy, like a real – like everything, like family-wise, in the locker room, really, I really admired him too. He had a real bad stuttering problem when he was younger, and really conquered it and was very comfortable. They became the GM in LA there for a while. You get up and talk in front of people. He was a real gentleman, really good guy.
Yeah, when he was general manager, that's what I remember most about him. He's not one of those guys. When you were in my position and you were a national beat writer, you needed to develop relationships with GMs, and you needed to have trusting relationships. And, you knew you were accepted when, you could make small talk. And so you get on the line with them and they'd say, Kevin Allen, what kind of trouble are you going to cause me today? Or, something like that. And then you'd laugh and, I remember I used to call Rajan Houle in Montreal, and he'd always say to me, "What kind of rumors you got?" That's how we always started the conversation. Yeah. And I would joke with him about, he'd give me a little bit of a heads up about what he's hearing, and I'd say, "Now, did you really hear this from someone at Counts, or did you read it in Bruce Gariak's column?" And he would laugh and said, "Yeah,
Bruce Gariak, there's a name for the past two. Bruce Gariak, that's good."
Yeah, but and then he'd admit, "Yeah, well, I read it Bruce Gariak's column."
Yeah.
So
Bruce Gariak,
is
he with Ottawa's son, Bruce Gariak? Is that?
Yeah, for sure.
So dealing with Bruce, and it's like you and I became really good friends through your work and mine as an agent. And Bruce was kind of the same way, but he was. If you just mentioned some rumor that you'd heard or an idea, he'd write it as a fact the next day of the paper. Yeah. He was like the rumor. He was the king of the rumors, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and everybody was there. But what I started to say about Dave Taylor is that he was friendly, but he was not one of those guys that would rib you or everything. Like he was just so, hello, Kevin, how are you?
Yeah, very business-like, right?
Yeah, business-like. But I really like talking to him. First of all, he would never lie to you. If he couldn't tell you something, he wouldn't try to steer you away. He'd just say, I really just can't get into that.
Right.
Totally. And I think that with Brian Murray, I loved Brian Murray for that same reason. I knew Brian Murray for 30 years, and he never once lied to me or misled me.
Right.
He would just say, Kevin, I can't talk about that. He goes, but you probably already know that. He would say that. So, but I like Dave as a general manager, quite a bit.
Brian Burke was great too. And I think I told the story before too. When Brian was an assistant GM in Vancouver, I believe I was just getting started in the agent business, and I had a client that they had drafted, the goaltender. It was like late round pick, like a 9th round pick or whatever. And I'm trying my best. I want to get a really good deal for him. And I think I sent a proposal to Brian asking for like a $40,000 signing bonus. And no, it must have been like a $10,000 signing bonus. And he calls me back. He says, Tom, you should have asked for $40,000. So you're going to get $40,000. Like, he helped me, because he knew I was a former player. We knew each other a little bit, but we weren't great friends or anything like that. I think he just he wanted me to be successul as an agent. So he wanted to help me. So he offered me more on the signing bonus than I'd asked for.
Wow, that's class. Yeah.
And I think that was the only time anybody ever did that. But he'd said, we had talked when I was a player. I think I can't remember, we were in LA or something like that. And I met him and we sat and chatted for a while. So we had somewhat of it wasn't like we were best friends, but we knew each other. And I think he just respected the fact that I was a former player trying to get into a new business too. So he was good.
Yeah. I liked Brian Burke when he was an agent, had all kinds of rules dealing with the press and with the players. I remember for his players, on your first contract, if you were going to be represented by him, you couldn't spend more than 5% of your income on a new car, or he just wanted people to be responsible. And there's a great story that I've heard told to me by several players that he went up, and I can't even remember who the player was now, but whoever it was, he didn't end up making it. But they had an interview of and Brian represented players on his team, and they had this interview when between the player and Burke about whether he was going to represent him. And they went in and they started talking, and Brian started talking about the rules he had and all that. And the player said, yeah, I got my heart set on whatever, Maserati or whatever it was. Yeah. So, I'm not going to be able to live by that. And they talked some more and all that. And when they were all done, he goes, the player said, I really enjoyed my experience here with this interview. I want you as my agent. And Burke supposedly told him, no, you got that wrong. I'm interviewing you. And I've decided not to take you as a client.
That wouldn't happen often.
I don't know. I've never asked Brian whether that was true or not. I should. But I'm guessing it was,
Yeah, I can see Brian doing that. Absolutely. And he was successful. So he could get away with it. Yeah.
Well, I know that, and I wish I could remember the player too, but I've heard the story too, that always when those supplemental discipline hearings, they'd have them. Always the first sentence out of the mouth of the player is, as everyone knows, I'm not that kind of player. And whoever it was, Brian Burke stopped him right there and said, you are that kind of player.
That's right.
Yeah, he was a piece of work. So
the other GM that I really got a kick out of too was, our old friend, obviously my old roommate Don Waddell, but Kenny Holland in Detroit. And when I lived in the Detroit area, I had a number of players there, and he was always the same way about being honest, right? Like, he wouldn't play some game with you if he wasn't going to be able to give you something. He would just say, Tom, I just can't do that. And I thought it really helped him too. Like, he was the same way with the players. So when he had to negotiate with them, he was very honest. He said, listen, we love you as a player here. You're a third line left winger, whatever it is, but this is all we could pay you. So it's like the players are more willing to accept, even though they didn't like it necessarily, they'd accept it better.
The story that best explains what kind of GM he was and the relationship he had with his players is his relationship with Nick Lidstrom. And he always used to joke that he was going to retire when Nick Lidstrom retired. Now, as it turned out, he wasn't much long after that he quit. But he didn't retire when Lidstrom retired. But anyway, the story is that, later in Lidstrom's career, when he had stopped working with an agent, he basically didn't negotiate with Lidstrom. They'd have their meeting, and Ken would explain where everybody was at on the team and what the budget was and the cap structure and how it would work. And then he would just turn to Nick and said, what do you need
Yeah.
out of the thing? And Nick would just pick a number based on all the thing. And that was a negotiation, as I've been told by both sides. It really wasn't a negotiation, you know.
Yeah.
Whatever Nick said, he was going to give him.
And you can't do that with too many people, right? Because obviously he's saying, listen, if you want to continue to win, here's our budget.
Yeah.
No,
and you know, he would make his case to that regard. But you know, he has said, at least he said to me, he would have given Nick whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
Because you know, he knew Nick was going to be fair, and he was trying to be fair. You know, Nick was so valuable to that team that you couldn't put a price on it. Yeah. You know, he was such an unbelievable defenseman.
All right, before we go, so are we made predictions here? What's going to happen with the CBA, or what are we going to do?
Well, I'm saying January 15th.
You're going to start January 15th, and the player's going to accept the proposal that's there now.
No, we're going to alter it a little bit.
Okay, so they're asking for the NHL's right now asking for a 26% deferral.
Yeah,
and at 20% is the escrow. That's the cap on the escrow. So they obviously will do that. So you think it's going to change? All right. I you know what? I'm going to agree. But I think, you know what? I think they're going to start on closer to January 1st.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, I could see that happen just because of the experience of the people who are in charge of all this. But, you know.
And they've worked together before so many times. And, you know, I just think that they know all the ways they negotiate. There's no secrets here. Yeah.
And they're both ferocious negotiators, but, you know, they know each other. So that takes some of the ferocity out of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
All right. Well, happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll be back after next week to start a thing. We'll be talking to, you know, I one of my goals, by the way, for the new year, I want to tell everybody this now. Yeah. I want to start bringing on guests. I do another podcast, and I kind of wanted to have, you know, this podcast be different, but I do think that because Tom and I know so many people, that it really probably would strengthen us if we have guests. So in the new year, that's going to be our goal. We're going to do that. And well, Tom and I got to talk about this, but we may have to go to 40 minutes if we do that. So
yeah. All right. Hey, and everybody, it is Thanksgiving tomorrow, so we can lighten up on the strict diet a little bit. All right. Not too much. Okay.
Are you going to have turkey, or are you putting it on?
No, we're having turkey. Going to have sweet potatoes, and we have to have stuffing and my homemade gravy. My homemade gravy is pretty good because I just use all the vegetables and all that. We blend them all up.
Right.
I am going to make an apple pie, but I am going to make my own pie shell, but I'm going to use almond flour instead of regular flour. So I'm still going to. All right. See you guys. Have a good Thanksgiving.